Hey, okay, so I realized that I cut my chin off in that last video. And so you just saw my lips, blah, 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 and my eyeball. So what I need is a couple of 11-year-olds here to help me with the actual right angle and stuff like that. But I'll figure it out as we go along. I'm sure this is only my number 2 video. Woot, woot. Okay. So one of the things we need to do is talk a little bit about the important key terms or the important terms and things that you need to focus on as you're going across the chapter material and throughout the course itself. What are some things to pay attention to? Well, let's just go in some of the chapters. First of all, and also talk a little bit about the science of human development. Now, human development itself seeks to understand how and why each individual is affected by the changes that occur across the lifespan. That's the actual definition from your textbook. The lifespan perspective, it doesn't just take human development into account. It takes all of the phases of life across an individual's lifespan into account, and how people develop in all these different contexts. So many people contribute to lifespan developmental psychology. You have neuroscience and biology and chemistry and social psychology and sociology and philosophy. You could go on with all the different areas that actually contribute to lifespan developmental psychology. And I think that's why it's one of also my favorite areas. And it's one that's constantly changing all the time. When this textbook came out, it was already out of date. I said that earlier. That's because we found out new things in the actual printing of of the actual textbook. It was written, it was edited, and then they were printing it, and new things were learned that changed what actually is in this textbook. That doesn't mean by any means that this textbook is flawed in any way, because it's a really great one. And the base of it is always going to stay the same. So that's important to remember. Nature nurture. Nature nurture is still a debate that we talk about a lot in the field of psychology itself, but also in lifespan developmental psychology, because like I said earlier, as we learn about things, genetics, neuroscience, how that plays a role in a developing person's life, how those things can change, how epigenetics occurs, and how things in the environment can actually change your genetic structure and then turn you into something that didn't really start out that way. And we can pass on those genes to the next generations and the next generations and the next generations. So nature-nurture debate is still alive in the field of lifespan developmental psychology and psychology itself. How much of genetics causes a person to be who they are, and how much of the environment causes a person to be who they are. Two people can grow up in the same environment and turn out completely differently, right? I mean, a lot of us have brothers and sisters who are not like us at all. I have 2 children who are not alike at all. They both have lots of gifts, and they have similar gifts. They have gifts that are different, but they're so different as individuals, and how the environment shapes them has been different because they're different individuals themselves. And then also how they view things is different. One can remember something one way, and the other one remembers it in a completely different way. There are critical periods in the lifespan, and there are also sensitive periods in the lifespan. With a critical period in the lifespan, something has to occur in order for something else to occur. So for instance, within the first 3 or 4 months, your visual cortex has to start developing. If it doesn't, because you have cataracts when you're born, then you won't see the way everybody else will see who didn't have cataracts, or who was born a seeing person, a person with vision. So they have to remove those cataracts within the first 3 months, 3 to 4 months, in order for you to develop normally in terms of your visual cortex. Now, sensitive periods are times when things can occur that can create a particular kind of outcome, one way or the other, or let me give you an example. So we're learning language actually in utero. That's pretty cool. That's kind of a newer kind of learning, something that we've just learned pretty recently. But so I guess I should say this, when you're born, you have a preference for the language or the sounds of from the language that your mother spoke while she was pregnant with you. You have a preference for that particular language. But when we begin to babble, we babble universally. We babble in all of the sounds of all of the languages that have ever been, and all 6,000 or plus languages that have ever been. We babble in all of those. But then as we continue to babble and people respond to our certain babblings, we start to form sounds or make more sounds that are in the languages that we're hearing every single day. So by the time you're 12 months, you're speaking several words. By the time you're 15 months, you're speaking about 50 words. By the time when you speak 50 words, then all of a sudden the floodgates open, and then you're speaking, many, many words in a month. You're getting like 50 to 100 words in a month. So, now, sensitive periods, that's from 0 to 3, right? 0 to 3 is what I just said. So if someone's speaking 2 languages to you, then you're going to babble in the sounds of the 2 languages. If they're speaking 3 languages to you, then you're going to babble in those 3 languages, and those are going to be your primary languages. So that's different. Some people are going to get 1 language, some people are going to get 2, some people are going to get a lot more than that, right? Anyway, so the sensitive period for language development is 0 to 3, and especially for the primary language. All right. In utero, girls genetically are stronger, and let me explain that. Because on the 23rd pair of chromosomes, where you have an XX for girls, an X from mom, an X from dad, and for boys you have an X and a Y, an X from mom and a Y from dad, the Y chromosome only has 27 paltry genes on it. Over time, that particular chromosome has not been able to link up with the X chromosome. So those genes that couldn't link up evolved away, evolved away, evolved away. Now, does that mean that we're going to evolve away boys? Of course not. We're not going to evolve away boys. Boys are still going to be around. But why is that? Why is that? So girl sperm are stronger. Boy sperm are faster. So in utero, you have more boys more XYs, I should say, that begin so you start out with a lot more XYs, but XYs are more likely to miscarry. And usually they miscarry earlier in the developmental process and within the uterus, early in the pregnancy. And so oftentimes people don't even know that they've been pregnant. XXs are stronger in terms of their immune systems, and they're they just are more hardy. So they are less likely to miscarry. But the downside of that is that women are more likely to end up with autoimmune disorders later on. But for boys, you know how when men say that they have a man cold? Well, a man cold is a real thing, right? So men do get sicker because they don't have the immune system that women have. So when whoever is the important male in your life gets the man flu, you should be kind to him, because he actually feels sicker than women feel. We don't feel as, we don't get as sick as men tend to get when they get the flu. So that's an actual real thing. Okay, let's see what else. Our cohort are the group of people that share about 10 years in a time span or lifespan with us. So they can be 5 years one way, or 10 years one way, and 5 or 10 years the other way. They share the exact same historical time period in life, and those things that happened during that time impacted them in the same way. So we most of us lived through 9/11, but how it impacted me and how it impacted you might be completely different. And also, if you lived in New York or you lived in Washington, D.C., or you lived in Pennsylvania, or you knew someone who passed away, it's going to impact you a lot differently than it is going to impact anybody else. So, but in general, your cohort shares the same kinds of historical events. They impacted you all in the same exact way. SES. So, socioeconomic status. Don't forget that socioeconomic status also includes a level of education. So it's not just how much money you make, but it's also what is your potential to make. So if two people, they're truck drivers, one has a high school degree and one has a PhD, who has more ability to earn money in the future? Well, the person with the PhD is what we assume that the person with the more education is able to earn more money, that they have the potential to earn more money, of course, unless they're a philosophy major, which that's just a joke, not necessarily. All right, so there's this joke that a philosophy PhD told me, and they said, "What do you call someone who has a PhD in philosophy?" And it's waiter, waiter. Anyway, okay, never mind. Cumulative disadvantage theory is not in the chapter, but it's an important concept to learn about. Cumulative disadvantage theory is the idea, let's just put it in the easiest terms that we can, that if you're born with fewer toys, you're going to end up life with fewer toys, right? So if you are disadvantaged from the beginning, that carries across your lifespan. So if somebody was born with more advantages, they're going to be more likely to have more toys at the end of life than you are, no matter how hard you work. Because, so for instance, if you're a kid who grew up in an impoverished home, your parents' mom didn't have proper nutrition when she was pregnant with you, she may not have actually gotten to the doctor as often as she should have with you, you're already starting out at a disadvantage. And then those disadvantages accumulate across time. This is a real problem, right? It means that you have less access to good schools, less access to good health care, less access to good nutrition, because if you live in an area that doesn't have highly nutritious foods. I mean, there are places in Portland and in Salem where there are grocery deserts, basically, that you can't really get to a grocery store that has highly nutritious, affordable food. A lot of the grocery stores in areas of Portland have left, right? Because they don't make as much money as they feel they should make, and so they leave that particular area. And so what do the people have access to? They have access to things like 7-Eleven, where they're going to get corn dogs or get crappy food that's in those bins that they've JoJo's, or potato chips or sodas, and that food is cheaper, but not always there, right, in that context. And so you end up paying more money than somebody who has access to grocery stores for those same foods even, and they're not going to be highly nutritious. And so those kinds of effects accumulate across the lifespan, and some people are more disadvantaged at the beginning, and that's something that we need to talk about in lifespan developmental psychology. Development doesn't happen in a vacuum. We have to take someone's culture. We have to look at it from multiple disciplines, which I've told you we do that. That development is not just linear. We don't just get better every day. A lot of times we're going in one direction and we hit a wall, or some catastrophe happens, and then we have to step back and take a different route, or crawl over the wall, or go under the wall. So how many times have you started on something and then you realized, well, that wasn't the thing that you really wanted to do or needed to do, and so you had to go in a different direction? That's multidirectional. I only have 30 seconds. Multi-contextual, you're plastic. Across the lifespan, we're able to grow and develop across our entire lifespan, even to the moment that we die. So I'll come back and talk to you more about a couple other things in a minute.